Good afternoon. We have a packed house, as everyone can see, but and for good reason. We have a really interesting panel today to talk about alternative schooling models, and I think you're going to have a lot of fun both learning about these schooling models that we've got up here. We've got four very interesting innovators in the field of K-12 education, and the hope of this session is we're going to go through basically three different types of conversations. The first conversation is what I'm calling a lightning round, where we're going to just blitz through all four of these folks up here, who I'll introduce you to in a moment, to get an overview of their school, actually feel a little bit of what it actually means to be a student in that school, just so we have a visual image in our head as we move into the second phase of some of the deeper philosophical questions around alternative schooling models. How do they think about the options in the space and the purpose of the options in their communities and so forth? That'll be the bulk of the conversation. My hope is that I fade away a little bit and they have some interesting conversation here that we all get to sit in on as we hear school leaders talk about innovation in our current K-12 climate. And then the last 10 minutes we'll go into the third part of the panel, where I'm going to ask them to predict and think about the future and where schooling will be 15 years from now, both for them and for the larger system. So that's the prompt so that they can be thinking about it. But that's our plan. So we're going to kick right off. It's my pleasure to introduce. We'll start Ken over there on the far end, the leader and entrepreneur behind DTech in Burlingame, California, but moving to Redwood Shores, part of the San Mateo district, I guess, but a charter school there. And full disclosure, I'm on the board of Silicon Schools Fund, and we fund Ken's school because we're really excited about it. So
thank you. We're really excited to be funded.
Sujata, right here, from not too far away in Los Angeles, Incubator School, founder there and school leader. So thrilled to have someone who's migrated down. Just maybe made the drive about an hour and a half, I guess, or so.
I flew, and it probably took
Okay, fair
fair
enough. But welcome and thank you. Carlos Moreno, who runs along with Andrew Friedman the Big Picture Learning Schools, which is a schooling network that now I had no idea until moments ago. 115 schools worldwide, so 55 in the United States and 60 internationally, which we'll be hearing about shortly. And then right here to my immediate left is Orly Friedman, who runs the Khan Lab School, and also a, full disclosure, Silicon Schools Fund portfolio grantee, but also, I'll tell you, Orly and I went to the same high school and the same college, and so have known each other for some time as well. So, so thrilled to be with all of you here. Ken, I'll just start with you, if you don't mind, in this lightning round. What I'd love you to do is just give us an overview. What does a day or a week in the life of a student look like?
Okay. Yeah, so right now we're a charter high school. We will be grades 9 through 12. We're just grades 9 and 10 right now, adding a grade each year. We have 280 students. And our mission is to develop students who believe that the world can be a better place and that they can be the ones to make it happen. So it's this sense of optimism and efficacy. And for us, we work with the D School at Stanford, and we teach the students design thinking because we believe design thinking is both a mindset and a process to help us reach this mission. And part of the design thinking mindset is a bias towards action. So we operationalize this bias towards action by really asking the students to be self-directed. So 3 days a week, a typical day that the students would come in and they'll start off, they meet with their advisors and they'll get something called their lab coat. And so the lab coat is just a piece of paper. And so what it is, it's where the students build their schedule for the day. So we want the students to be in charge of their learning. They know what they need to learn. And on this lab coat, it might say Lab 1, Math. And there may be a referral there where the teacher has gone in and said, I need to see this student either because they need extra help or because maybe they need a little push to go deeper in the subject. But if the students do not have any referrals, then they can choose what they're going to work on. They can work independently, and that could be something like working ahead in a class or catching up somewhere else. They can do a curiosity project. And so the curiosity project is really what we're pushing them towards. And so those are things like, one of the best curiosity projects we've had is, as Michael mentioned, we're moving to Redwood Shores, so we're going to be located on the Oracle campus in about a year and a half. And so we have a pretty deep partnership with Oracle. And one of our best curiosity projects is Oracle employees came in and taught some of our students how to build wearable technology. So we had a 9th grade girl, her grandma was visually impaired, and she always had to get her change in ones. So she built this little bracelet that when you put the different bill under it, plays a different song. So you put the $5 bill under it, it recognizes the purple hue in it, plays the Mario Kart song. So that's an example of a curiosity project. So students can work on that. They could also do physical activity, or they could also, they do have a specific design lab class that they're a part of. They could work on the design challenge. So after the students build their schedules for the day, the teacher initials it, and then they spend the next 2 days actually working on just implementing their plan. We're really trying to model what we do as adults, where we know what we need to get done, and we schedule it in a way where I need to meet with this person, I need to work independently, I need to go off campus and do this or whatever. So we're trying to build those skills in the students. And then they end their day in their design lab class, and that's where they're taught design thinking and the design thinking process. So it's really, like I said, we're really trying to operationalize that self-direction in a big way, because we have 280 kids. We have 280, ages 13 through 15 that are building their own schedule, then working through this throughout the day. So the typical day, it's extreme personalization. So it varies by the kid, but it all starts with them knowing what they need to do and building the schedule and how they're going to use their time, then us providing the expertise to help each student reach their goal.
Perfect. Sujata?
So our school is an entrepreneurship themed school. We're an LA Unified District pilot school, which means we have charter-like autonomies, but not full autonomies like charters do. So our mission is startup students, and everything we do tries to focus on that, which means growing student agency, but also launching startups. So our 8th graders launch a startup within school, and once we get to 12th grade, our 12th graders will launch a startup in the real world in Silicon Beach, or go work at a Silicon Beach startup. We want to prepare kids for 3 different futures, one which is college, a traditional 4-year college pathway. Also startup land, so they can choose to move into that and then come to college when they're ready to go to college. And then the third choice that we're preparing students for is a kind of an uncollege, unbundled experience, because by the time we have our first graduating class in 2020, we think that there'll be a lot more options available than just a straight 4-year path. So that means teaching kids to know how to grow their skill sets, curate them, find the resources that they need to do, and move forward. That being said, so a typical day, you come in, if you're in 7, 8, 9, that's Inc. Explore. They would start in advisory, and advisory has a bunch of different possibilities. There are clubs, student-created clubs within school, so you can join the drone club, you create your own clubs. We've got a bunch of YouTube clubs, there are humor channels, they're developing their own videos, they also are measuring their analytics every week and trying to figure out how to grow their social media presence. And it could be a performing arts club, but you would also be meeting with your advisor on different days of advisory, and you're also deeply immersed in current events, because if you want to become a problem solver in the future, you kind of need to know what's going on in the world today. So there'll be discussions around that, watching CNN Student News, a variety of different aspects through that. Then you would move into impact projects. We have 2 kinds of impact projects, humanities impacts projects and STEM impact projects. So you go in, you might be working solo, you might be working with a group, you're coming up using design thinking, you're coming up with a challenge you might want to solve. So for example, a lot of these are coming out of their kids' own lived experiences. We have a kid whose parent is a construction worker, so what they want to do is create a prototype of an extra brace that supports your back, but yet also gives you an extra pair of hands to do different things. It could be something that's actually quite real world and practical. There are a lot of kids who play with those little tech decks, so you can use a 3D printer to design mods for your tech deck. And you're building documentation around that, so there's writing involved, there's presentation involved, there's pitching involved. And you may, on a different day of Humanities Impact Project, be meeting one-on-one with the English teacher to develop your persuasive writing skills. So we kind of cover core skills through the impact projects. Then you might go off to PE, where you're learning to play soccer, but then you're also designing your own games to assess how well you and your teammates have done on soccer. Then you might go to Spanish and use a variety of Duolingo as a way to learn Spanish, but then also be meeting with the teacher on one-on-one for conversations, small groups. And then finally you would have, if you're an 8th grade or an entrepreneurship class, where they started, say, with 14 teams at the beginning of the year, and they're narrowed down to 7 teams. all of whom have seed funding, and they've been pitching to successively more exalted CEOs from the real world, and they will have a full launch competition May 14th. And then finally, you may have a STEM impact project where you're doing something that's STEM-based, like working with Cedars-Sinai. They send us design challenges, help our cancer patients solve how to make sense of their private lives as they go into treatment. So it's a kind of inside-outside world as much as possible.
Terrific. Carlos.
Sweet. So as Michael mentioned, we have over 115 schools worldwide, and although the majority of our schools are high schools, we also operate in the K-12 space. And I think it's important also kind of give a perspective of who our students are, where it's 75% of our students across our schools are students of color. Over 20% of them have been diagnosed with some sort of learning difference, or I classify as special education, and over 75% of them qualify for free or reduced lunch. And given that, we believe that all of our students are brilliant, and we need to give them and provide them an opportunity to be brilliant. And if we don't do that, we won't see it. So for us, it's around our 3 core values, which we focus on our 3 R's, which are relationships, relevance, and rigor. We believe wholeheartedly that to best serve and educate our students, you need to know them really well. So similarly to my colleagues to the left, we have a robust advisory system that is a significant part of the school day. So advisory can be anywhere from 2 hours to 4 hours a day, which focuses on content, but also on social and emotional learning and non-cognitive development. And students are with that same advisory over the course of their 4 years. Their advisory, they remain as a cohort, and they have the same advisor. So that advisor serves as the conduit to families, to community, to partnerships, and really knows their students truly holistically. Our students are out at internships learning in the real world 2 full days a week. So we believe the work that the students should be doing is relevant, and they're pursuing areas that they're passionate about, they're curious about, and really encouraging students to dive into that world outside of the school world. Those internships are happening on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, the students are in with those advisories, but then also engaged in deep project-based work, incorporating the different content areas into those projects, and the projects have to be designed to give back to their internship site. So they're not just amorphous projects that are kind of developed so that they can be graded, but there's some sort of real-world value to those projects. Throughout, obviously, they're developing, throughout the day, they're developing their skills in writing and numeracy and obviously literacy. But for us, it's really important that the work be really relevant to the student. And then when we talk about rigor, obviously very difficult to assess young people if every student has an individual kind of programming and plan in that way, and just kind of use a blanket assessment. So students, in addition to your more traditional formative and summative assessments, have to actually demonstrate and present quarterly what they've learned and defend their work in front of their peers, their mentors, whether professionals at the work sites, other adults, and really constantly refine their work and making improvements on their work, and then that cycle will continue throughout the year.
Orly.
So Khan Lab School is an independent school founded by Sal Khan based on his book, The One World Schoolhouse. We're in our 2nd year of operation, and we currently serve 60 students in the equivalent of kindergarten through 8th grade. And I say equivalent because we don't have grade levels. Instead, we've decided to group our students by independence level, which means we put them in groups based on how much support they need from a teacher in order to work to the best of their ability. So their day looks very different based on their independence level, but for all students, it starts with goal setting, even from our 5-year-olds. So for most students, every student sits down with their teacher one-on-one for 30 minutes each week to go over their goals, and they set goals in a range of subject areas, as well as things like character strengths and cognitive skills and personal passion projects. On a day at the Khan Lab School, a student would sit down and take a look at their goals, and that would define how much time they spend on different subjects, where they're working, who they're working with, the time they spend with a teacher, the time they spend doing group work, For the most part, the day is split into 2 chunks. The morning is more individual self-paced work where teachers push in as tutors or pull students for small group instruction. The afternoon is more focused on collaborative project-based work. In addition, all of our students have 2 blocks of wellness each day. They have inner wellness and outer wellness. And our school day goes until 6 p.m. So many of our students stay for an extended day program to continue working on their goals. And that could be their personal goals or collaborative project goals.
Perfect. So let's, just to give people just one level deeper, can we just talk about the tools that you all use at your schools? Technology, books, products, whatever you use. I'll start actually with you, Orly. I'm assuming Khan Academy is big in use. Otherwise, we'll tweet that. What else do you all use during the day? What else are students learning it through?
Sure. So yes, we use Khan Academy for math and also for JavaScript. We also use Lexia for some of our students and Lightsail as well. For computer science, we, like I said, use Khan Academy and also Tinker for some of our younger students. And then for tracking, we've kind of put together our own homemade product of a bunch of Google Sheets, but we'll be developing something that actually puts all of that information together for us. But those are the primary tools that we use.
Cool.
I think it was Dr. Rice who said last night, I'm sure a lot of us heard her say this, that technology is neutral. It's how you use it. That's really important. So for us, I mean, we've been tech omnivorous. So we totally, we know if it's about content delivery, there are so many different options that exist in terms of delivering content. For us, it's important that students are engaged with technology that's being used in the real world. If it's being used in the real world, we want our students to be able to use it. And it really depends on their internships. So if a student, let's say, is interested and engaged in auto mechanic work, we want them utilizing that technology. If they are in a hospital, we want them using the top ultrasound equipment. It really is focused on those students' interests and really helping develop and identify what are those technology streams that they're using. Having said that, we're also recognizing that we need to develop our own platform, and currently in the beta stage of developing a platform that would allow not just big picture schools, but other schools to develop and manage internship-based relationships between schools and workplace locations, and also for students to be able to track their progress, their learning, document it in real time, and connect it to a mobile app that will allow students to kind of check in when they're at their internship site, which is, as you could imagine, for a lot of educators, a question that comes out, how do you know that they're there? There'll be this option where the students can kind of check in and document their learning. And then for the mentors and professionals to actually be able to really verify what it is that the students are doing and learning.
Awesome.
So I think like a lot of people, we're still looking for that perfect learning relationship management tool, kind of the one ring to rule them all that everything feeds into. Haven't found it yet, so this year we're using ChalkUp because we found that that had the most student collaboration potential. Then within that, I mean, we use Google Apps for everything. JR's over here. We have Newsella for leveled reading. We use NoRedInk for grammar. We use Khan Academy for math, and teachers use BlendSpace, which is now a TES thing, for building out kind of their own pathways and playlists. And then Jupyter Grades for grading, which is all too many things to log into problematically.
So we use, we're one-to-one, so every student has a Chromebook. Then we use Buzz for our LMS, which is Brain Honey, like the next generation of that. And then we use a lot of the Google Apps tools, because when we were brand new, and so some of the advice we got when we opened was said, do everything on pencil, paper, and Google Apps. So it's use the free stuff until you really figure out what your needs are before you go out and purchase something. Then we use Math Excel for math, but then the rest of it, as one of our physics teachers put it, they said, well, the kids have a Chromebook, my textbook's the internet. So the rest of it is just the teachers are creating, then, so that's one thing that Buzz is pretty good at, is letting the teachers create the courses and the assessments. And then we also view technology as not just a tool to help learning, but it's a material, especially where we're located in the Silicon Valley, that the kids need to look at tech as it's a material, it's something you build with, it's something you manipulate. And so that's kind of our viewpoint. It's been really interesting to me how many people, like when we were talking, like it seems like we had a lot of things that were similar, and how many of us are like, well, we're building our own. Like, well, that is just, I'm starting to think the problem might be us. Like we just have to do it ourselves. So that's what we're using.
Do any of you use textbooks?
No.
Not one of you. Okay.
We have to have them in the room by law.
You have them in the room by law?
Yes. But LAUSD requires that we have the requisite number of textbooks. So they're in closets and stuffed in boxes, and and if the inspectors walk in, the kids need to know where to point to where the books are. This is the world we operate in.
That's amazing.
Hundreds of millions.
In our English classes, we use books. And okay. But there is this fear that in a few years, and the research is starting to show that you're reading on a device, it doesn't have the same retention, and so our kids do use books in English class.
Gotcha. And then before we get into the going deeper question, the question I'm curious with activities that don't look like what most people here went to as school, how do you think about success? How do you measure it in concrete ways against short-term and long-term goals?
So we've created just two different buckets. We have our standardized and our personalized. Okay. So standardized are things like we do the NWE maps. We haven't taken any of the state tests yet because we're just up to 10th graders. We'll have the state tests. We're looking at PSAT data. But then we look at the personalized things, which are things like grades, course completions, but even more so, all of our students are required to do presentations of learning. So we look at those, and then the curiosity projects, and then as they're getting older, we're going to start looking at things like problems solved, patents filed, research papers presented, panels spoken on, and things like that. So we're still filling that out, but for us, the personalized is way more important than the standardized bucket.
So pretty much many of the same things that you guys do. This year we've taken a break from NWA MAP, but next year we will have it back again. We've had it in the past 2 years. We have our own, we do student surveys once a month, and it's pretty comprehensive, and it's really to assess student engagement, agency, ownership, what students feel like they can do to take ownership of their own goals and what they're learning, how their learning growth happens. We use teacher surveys for our faculty after every professional development, parent surveys, a lot of input-based things. And eventually it's going to be our metric when we get to 12th grade is about startups, how successful these startups have been, and college completion. Also, not quite sure what that unbundled metric will look like yet, but we'll develop metrics as we go. That's what we found we've had to do.
Got it. Cool. Carlos.
Yeah, so when we talk about student outcomes for us, when we talk about success, we believe that it's not just about 10th grade test scores or exit exams or even college entrance rates. It's really, we look at it with a longitudinal lens. So we want to know where our students are 5 to 10 years after graduating our schools and how the experiences that they had within our schools have put them ideally on the right trajectory to be passionate and love what they do and be successful in many ways the way they would define the success. Not for us to define what success is for them. So we're currently engaged in an ongoing longitudinal study of our graduates, because for us that is the ultimate kind of measure for us.
Do you have a sense? I'm pushing you just because you've been around a lot longer than the other schools here.
Thanks, Michael. So,
No, so I'm curious, right? Like, what is that number, or what is that metric? You've been around for 97, 96?
Not 97 years, but 20.
But 1997, right? Yeah. So what does that look like now? You have a lot of graduates out there in the real world.
Totally. So graduation rates, they've ranged since 2006 from 78% to 92% four-year cohorts, matriculation rates over 80%. The longitudinal study has been fascinating. So we see now that 72% of our graduates that have gone on to college have graduated or are still studying. So they're persisting.
That's good.
So that's we're not content with that, but we also know, given the demographics and the populations that most of our schools serve,
you're significantly higher than
yeah, we're in a good place, and we want to continue to improve and kind of share what we're learning as well. But we're also engaged in an ongoing connector study. So we also know there are a number of students that chose to go a different path. And what we're finding is employability is super high. It's in, almost 80%. So students are engaged in active work, and they're citing their internship experience as catalysts for jobs. So, that, again, that's kind of why we hold true to that internship component and believe that we need to be unwavering and unapologetic, and those 2 days are essential. That's really true learning, we believe, for our students.
Real core. Cool. Orly.
So for us, in terms of measuring short-term success, we'll look at the goal trackers and whether the students are meeting their goals each week, and whether they're meaningful goals, and if they're not meeting their goals, are they at least reflecting on why they didn't in a meaningful way. In the long term, we'll measure our success against our mission, which has 3 components. First, fully empowered future citizens, and we'll measure that against our graduate profile, which has character strengths, cognitive skills, global citizenship, accretion standard, and a personal passion project. The second part of that is by pioneering models of education, and I think we'll measure that similarly through stakeholder surveys to parents, students, and teachers, but also by how many resources we're able to share with others and how many schools or classrooms adopt some of these practices. And then the last part of our mission statement is putting students at the center of their learning, and we'll measure that by this independence grouping and whether students are in fact getting to the level of student agency that we hope for by the time they leave us.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's dive a little deeper. I'm curious. Obviously, the subtext of the panel like this is thinking about very different schooling options for kids, and the schooling options world has obviously blossomed quite a bit over the last since 1991, really, right? But a lot of the schools that have been born don't look like the ones that you're creating here. So I'm curious, how do you think about the options that you're presenting within the options that have blossomed up, and how do you think about the importance of having different school types for students to make those decisions that may look like what you guys are creating, or quite frankly, in some cases, don't? Anyone dive in?
Well, I think just like technology is neutral, personalized learning and blended learning can be neutral, bad, or good. And in the worst case, blended learning might look like students staring at a screen, not speaking to anyone, moving at their own pace, but also maybe gaming the system. Neutral could be a flipped classroom, but when it's good and when it's really good, it's motivating students, it's making teachers' jobs easier, and it's creating lifelong learners. And I think the more options that we can give students or give the education world of good personalized and blended learning, the better, because every community is going to take what it values and apply it to that. But if there are more options, then
yeah. And I think we look so different just because the world is so different now, and that we talk a lot about how the deal we used to have with kids, it doesn't exist anymore. It used to be go to high school, get good grades, go to college, get good grades, and there's a career out waiting for you. Like, that deal doesn't exist, and then, the education system has to catch up. I mean, now the deal is you go to college, you're more likely to live at home, you have student debt, and so I think the thing that I heard a lot in common is this move towards self-direction and critical thinking, and a lot of these skills that are really difficult to automate, because that's one thing that we're trying to respond to that. And somebody even said early on, they said our t-shirt could be D-Tech, we'll keep your kids out of your basement. Because it's really trying to give kids that option and the skill, like I said, that we very much believe that the world is moving, it's quickly changing and unpredictably changing. So the best we can do as a school system to prepare kids for the next 40 years is give them this transferable skill set with design thinking. And I think it is important for kids to have options. I look at sometimes I make analogies between physical and academic achievement, and we all agree that being physically fit and being active and things like that, it's a good thing for us individually. But then if you look at the ways you can do that, I mean, just at the hotel where I'm at, there's the daily method, the bar method, there's like a CrossFit down the street, there's a gym in the hotel. So there's all these different ways that you can get to that. So why wouldn't you have the same options for academic achievement and mental achievement? So I think it is important that all the different options are out there.
So while I believe options are important, I do believe that it's important to teach habits of mind to students that will allow them to be successful in areas and careers that we don't know much about yet, that are still developing. And I do think that to do that, there are several things that need to happen. I think you definitely need to pay attention to the whole child, right? So the conversations around academic development and skills is very important, but we also need to focus on those things that are not right in front of us when it comes to students. And that's why I do feel that as schools, while there should be options, I do think that there's a piece that too many schools are lacking and missing that they need to focus on.
So it's I mean, you would say a lot of the options, but I want to do this, right? So you know what I'm doing? But so it's your sense that a lot of the options that have been borne up, like, actually lack that and are unhealthy in terms of not preparing students for those pieces of the development.
Indeed. And in all cases, and I wouldn't say that in all cases those are super intentional. They may just be a lack of understanding or know-how. Or even, you can get into teacher preparation, right, in terms of what's the focus. But I do think that that is a very significant piece that's lacking in way too many schools.
Do you all agree with that?
Yeah, and I think the schools themselves are realizing this as they look at long-term post-collegiate activities and what's happening with their kids. So I think that we're on the bleeding edge of understanding what agency is. And while other schools may not want to replicate different parts of our models, I think that what we are really innovating is trying to understand how students can become agents of their own learning, and it's a lifelong learning process, which is what's necessary to respond to the economy that we're entering into that Michael Moe talked about yesterday, and that we all have been reading bits and pieces of all over the place.
I don't know if I agree. I don't know if it's an issue of options or the capacity to execute the vision. Like, I don't know if what you're saying is is really the issue well, this is a bad option for the kid, or it's a staff capacity issue and they can't implement that option. Because I feel that from what I've seen, a lot of schools that aren't serving kids, it's not necessarily, they all have great mission and vision statements. It's more the capacity of the adults than the actual option.
I disagree with that, because I think that sometimes it's capacity, but sometimes it's equity. It's like, I'm the mother of an 18-year-old. I wouldn't want to create a school that I wouldn't send my own child to. And we see that far too often in the world. And our mission specifically is socioeconomic integration. We want to always be 50% high income, 50% low income, because to create entrepreneurship, you need to integrate social networks, capital networks, intellectual networks, networks of know-how and access and all of that. And what I see happening far too often in the educational landscape is people create kind of schools that they wouldn't send their own child to.
So are the schools that you guys have created, do you all feel like they're for everyone? Or like anyone can go to your schools and be successful, or not necessarily? Like would certain people you'd say, hey, actually this is not the right fit for you, I would counsel you to go elsewhere. How do you think about that?
It's a great question. I mean, we've had that happen just because we're so small and so young that we don't have the resources for that extra stuff. I mean, but we're still 20% special ed, we're full inclusion, all of that stuff. But sometimes you just meet cases that when you have a staff of 10, it taxes our resources too much. I would hope that 10 years down the road, we would never have to say that.
I think personalized learning is for everybody. It's just which I guess this sort of sounds contradictory. It's personalized, but it's for everybody. But it's the different cultures. Schools can have different cultures that I think might make it not exactly the right fit. And we tell students coming in, that you'll be most comfortable here if you want an active role in your education. But even if you don't, you might be uncomfortable. But that is a good push for them.
We get that question a lot, and what I think is exciting about this model is that it serves a broader population than traditional schools. So when I taught third grade, I had kids in my class who, we would sort of have an antagonistic relationship just because, they wouldn't sit still, they wanted to go to the bathroom all the time, and you just had to remind them, these small little actions like, okay, it's not time to get up and get a snack, and all these little redirections that influence your relationship. Whereas in Khan Lab School, where students really own all these aspects of their day, they're free to get up when they need to, get a snack, go to the bathroom, work on the content that they deem most important at the time. It reduces so many of those little frictions that come up in traditional school settings, and I think that helps more students be successful. I also think about what are the problems that this model is solving. So it's solving the problem of students who are super motivated but don't have an outlet for it in their current classroom. It solves the problem of kids who aren't motivated but need to find that by having this blank canvas and someone to believe in them. It solves the problem of students who are really advanced but are slowed down by the current school. It also solves the problem of kids who are behind and need more intervention. It doesn't on its own solve problems of poverty or broken families, but this model does allow for more meaningful adult-student interactions. And so to the extent that that is beneficial for students, I think it helps a wider range.
Well, we definitely try to design our schools to be completely inclusive and meet the needs of a wide range of learners. But we also recognize that for us, it's important that a student and their family are comfortable with the dynamics and the programming that exists within our schools because of its untraditional nature. So for us, it's really, that's kind of the key cog. I think historically, and even 20 years in, when we look at the demographics across our schools, early language, English language learners aren't necessarily a significant population within our schools. And I think that for us, we're still really trying to figure that out based on our staffing model. But that's, if I had to say there's a population of students that we're not serving currently, I would say those would be the students. And for us, it's about trying to also continue to figure out how do we do that.
So that actually brings up a really interesting point which is what do you all set as goals for self-improvement? What are the big questions you look at your school? Everyone here, I suspect, is in a self-improvement cycle constantly. Mm-hmm. What are the big outstanding things that you're saying, haven't cracked that, this is our goal for the next year? It sounds like you just identified one. Yeah. Others, where do you come out on that?
Well, so for us, we want 100% of the students to have a curiosity project. And so we know that we could get that by saying, okay, here's your curiosity project, it's worth 100 points. But then it's no longer a curiosity project. We very much talk with the kids about, we're not trying to teach compliance. Schools know how to teach compliance. We can reward and punish you to compliance. We're trying to teach self-direction, which is a much bigger ask. And so we say your job to come to school is to learn. It's not to perform for the adults. And the best way that is manifest is in the curiosity project. But we don't have 100%.
Where are you right now?
I would say we just we're actually gathering data right now. We're probably 40 to 50% at best. And because we get a lot of students who come to us, and it's a lot of the higher achieving students. They're you give them the essay topic, they'll knock that out of the park. Mm-hmm. They'll get all that math done. But then they're okay, what should I do next? It's well, that's what you need to figure out. And it's funny, because like I said, we work a lot with Oracle, and they were observing one day when our kids were doing this, and one kid said, well, I have all my work done, I don't really have anything to do. And he said, if I said that to my boss, I'd get my ass kicked. So it was it's kind of oh, I need to find something to do. I mean, because it's this mindset that a lot of times through schools that it's, like I said, it's really a compliance culture. So for us, that is our mission manifest, and we don't have that figured out yet.
I agree, and it's the same thing applies to our staff, because I think that's our biggest sort of challenge is growing staff to be less in that compliance framework, and also just to grow interdisciplinarities more so that things aren't siloed. When you come into secondary, people seem to take ownership of their content knowledge and still sort of think of themselves as very, very wonderful content pushers. Whereas instead what we want is how do you help integrate this organically into a kid's passion project, into their impact project. So teacher growth is always the first thing on our agenda, and student growth follows from that.
I think something that we'll be balancing for a while is efficiency versus agency, and figuring out what our school in particular is comfortable with and what our families are comfortable with, and also pushing them. But when students enter ConLab school and we tell them, okay, well, you're setting your goals and how you spend your time is up to you, and we're going to guide you to make good decisions. Some kids end up wasting a lot of time for the first couple months, and then when they figure it out, it's so much more meaningful. But how much time do we allow? Where is that balance? I think that'll be a question that we're asking for a long time.
Gotcha. So the content knowledge piece that you brought up, I want to hit on, because I think there's been a conversation in education over the last several years around 21st century skills, the importance of actually applying what you know, that knowledge is becoming the commodity, and yet the research shows that may all be true, but that content knowledge is actually really important still, so that you have something to manipulate and think about. So how do you address the rigor of content knowledge in a structure that doesn't always prioritize that in sort of an obvious direct instruction way?
It's a very tough question. One, I think that we need to pare down the amount of content knowledge that's required. I mean, I think that you just become overwhelmed by the number of standards that need to be pushed in some ways. I think that we try to approach it through current events. Like, if you have a robust understanding of what's going on in the world, that ignites your curiosity, it ignites your need to know, so that content knowledge is coming from an organic internal place. It's still a work in progress, though.
Yeah, we address that similarly. I kind of model what Stanford does with the D school. That you can't go to Stanford and graduate from the D school and get a diploma from the D school. You can't major in that, but you can do computer science, school of education, law school, business school. Come over to the D school, learn design thinking, and then take that back to your discipline. Because we believe innovation lies at that intersection of mastery of a content and a problem-solving process. Because we agree that, and that's why our kids still, they have a physics class, an English class, like they still have that content, because when you just have to look everything up on Google, like it's not an efficient way to innovate. So I think it's important.
Yeah, we're changing our staffing structure for next year, basically to be better at this. So we'll have a set of advisors who are doing these one-on-one advisories, getting to know the students' academic and personal goals, and then incorporating them into projects. And then another set of instructors that are content experts that will also inform those projects and help students along the way. But we're hoping that by doing that, students will cover the necessary content, and we call it foundational fluencies, that they need as a base, but as much as possible by integrating them into the projects.
Gotcha.
Fascinating. I think for every research study that you could provide that says that this is important, we could find a research study that'll say that's not as important. But having said it, but I...
No, you're allowed to disagree.
You know what I'm saying? But we definitely believe in skill attainment, right? So students developing skills and being able to be able to manage and be literate and numerically savvy and critical thinkers. But also by doing that within the context of their interests, which obviously is very difficult, but we're pretty unwavering and unapologetic about that. Like that for us, it's around that level of personalization that's really important, especially given a lot of the populations of students that we serve that have historically been marginalized, not engaged, and if you're going to do the same thing, you're going to get the same results. So you got to change it.
What's your school size?
They range from 150 students to 1,000.
1,000?
Wow.
But then we believe in breaking them down into smaller academies, right? So you won't have just a 1,000 student school. You might have 4 academies of 250 student school.
Okay.
So let's move into the last section of the panel as we start to near time, which the segue question I actually want to have for you all is, what are the obstacles right now in your schooling development? Like what's blocking you? And that can be public policy, it can be perception, it can be parents, it can be your educators, it can be you. Like, what's blocking the technology? What's blocking you?
I think for us, right now we're K through 8, but we would like to be K through 12. And I think there are a lot of schools out there that are K through 8 who wish they had a high school, but don't because of college admissions requirements, because it would force them to change their model too much. So that is an obstacle we're working on. And I think there's exciting potential for dialogue with admissions officers, but with UC requirements around seat hours, like our kids don't even have seats to sit in that way. So that's probably the most pertinent obstacle. And it also affects parent mindsets because parents are really excited about sending their kid to our school for kindergarten, first, second grade, third grade, and maybe they start getting a little nervous around fifth grade. And by the time they're in seventh or eighth grade, they're worried about what this means for college and college options.
I agree completely. Everything you just said. In addition, I think one of our obstacles is that, I think licensure needs to be reformed. Who's going to teaching, how you're credentialed, who we allow to be in front of our children. So many of the things that we need an engineer to come in and work with kids on robotics for an hour a week, but there shouldn't have to be a credentialed teacher sort of babysitting the engineer. Same with coders, same with anyone who has a specialized performing arts skill, a variety of things. It's just this sheltering of kids from the rest of the world. Everything's governed by the fear of being sued and tort law. We need to reform all of that so that inside can come outside, outside can come inside. The building is more porous.
So I think it's for us people in a similar way that personalization is very people intensive. When a kid says, I want to do this curiosity project, how do we get the expertise to do that? You cannot, it's difficult to learn things online. It's really, it's not, you can learn, so I don't think we're quite there. So we need the people to be mentoring the kids that way. And then also higher ed for a high school. The UC system is just, it's something we have to work around. It does not support the work we're doing at all.
So I agree with everything my colleague said. In addition, I believe that there are a number of schools and districts that have been reaching out that are serving significant number of students that identify under quote-unquote alternative education. And if you want to see, my colleague yesterday was on a panel, he shared this, but if you want to see some of the most marginalized students and just the inequity at its absolute worst, look at alternative schools. Students are relegated to packets. They're not able to engage in real world learning that many folks unfortunately believe that are for those that are privileged, or even for those that you have to develop basic skills first before you have that access to that type of learning. And that for us has been a real challenge, I think, in terms of how we engage with school districts, and changing some of those mindsets continues to be a challenge. And we'll go through processes of showing them different learning environments where it's happening successfully and students are being successful, but it has and continues to be a challenge.
Gotcha.
So we're up for the fight, though.
This time is flying by. Let's go down. I think we have a couple minutes left. Let's go down the panel. And predictions for 15 years from now, we all come back. Where will your school be, and where will the schooling system be in terms of options, and what will it look like?
Oh, so literally we'll be on the Oracle campus then, so we're very excited about that. And
so Oracle will still be here.
Yeah, so at least Larry Ellison's money will still be here. So we'll be on the Oracle campus, hopefully, assuming Oracle's still there. And we'll have our kids will be able to really build their own schedules, and they will also have a lot of access to the people to support their curiosity projects. And I think the system, especially here when we're about tearing down the walls. I think there'll be a lot more public-private partnerships. I mean, that is one of the things that up in the Bay Area that Oracle said they're trying to do. They're trying to drive a stake in the ground and say, if you really want to support schools, like, here's a way to do it. Like, build them a building. But then give us, we have absolutely 100% full autonomy in running the school. Like, they are just providing us a building and providing us access to their employees to help teach kids things that kids want to learn. So I think I can see more and more of those public-private relationships develop.
Cool.
So we wish we were on Oracle's campus. I would actually prefer to just be in a large kind of co-working space where there's the school, startups are coming in and using space around us. The community can come in. Someone can say, I need a website designed. Is there a kid who can do this for me? Nonprofits can come in and bring in campaigns that they want run. It's kind of just a general community problem-solving space where schooling is part of that in an ideal world. Future of education 15 years from now, if you look back at every past 15-year cycle, there's not a lot of room for optimism. I mean, I would not be surprised if 15 years from now there are very similar conversations happening.
We'll also be on Oracle's campus.
All right.
With one of the 500 schools.
We'll take Google. We don't need to just be at Oracle. We'll take Facebook.
We have someone who claimed that over here.
For us, it's just that students are learning in real time, anywhere and at any time, and there are systems in place where students can receive micro-credentials, and that is being embraced in a very real way. And that we continue to be, partnering with colleagues like these in this work, because it's no one organization, no one person, no one group can do it alone. But that's, for us, that's our hope.
When I think about the education landscape, I think about the top-down forces from universities and the workforce that will shape schools. And I am optimistic. I think schools will see that content knowledge is not necessarily as important. Already, some schools are looking at these digital lockers. So badging and a portfolio and all of that, I think, will support more mastery-based schools. So I'm optimistic about that. And I think the bottom-up forces are going to be, technology is only going to get better at allowing students to know what comes next for their learning and do it on their own. So I think that's going to make schools more porous, it'll free up time and space constraints of schools. Homeschooling has grown by 60% in the last decade. And I think schools will start moving more in that direction. Already some schools are offering work from home days. So those are some things that I imagine in the next 15 years. And for us, my hope is that, I think the schools that we all work at are so radically different because for 100 years, schools weren't thinking about the change in context. And so my hope for the ConLab School is that we, over the next 15 years, are continuously thinking about this changing context and are nimble enough to adapt to it.
Awesome. Everyone, please join me in thanking these trailblazers.